What's good? It's Woog. Well, damn, okay. Dustin Poirier TKOs Conor McGregor in the second round, and the MMA community is turned upside down. Look, I thought that Conor McGregor was going to win this fight via KO or TKO, probably within the first couple rounds. The first round was competitive. I don't even know who. I think I would give that one to Conor McGregor, even though he was taken down at a point, which was a good strategy, smart strategy by Poirier to, drain some of the energy from Conor by securing the takedown in the first round. He didn't do a ton of damage. I thought that Conor did a lot more damage in the stand-up in the first round, which is why I would give that one to Conor. But Poirier did advance his cause. So by the second round, Conor was able to come out early in the second, guns blazing again, where it's like you don't want to get caught by Conor in the first 2 to 3 minutes of any round, but especially the first 2, maybe 3 rounds. But you started to see more things start to work for Poirier even after he absorbed some hard, left hands, and even that right, kind of a right upward cross that Conor likes to throw. He'll come over the top with the left, and then he'll come from underneath with a shooting right upward. And so he was able to splash on Poirier a couple times with that. Poirier took it pretty well, even though I didn't love his body language. Poirier started to get hit, and then he kind of has that stance where he's doing like that, and it looked like he was getting knocked around by the punches. And I was wondering, okay, are his legs starting to kind of give out? Are these things playing into his head where mentally he's thinking, oh boy, here we go again, I know what this feels like? But no, Poirier really is not the same guy he was 6-7 years ago. And, he's fought so many rounds versus so many good fighters. He, stopped Gaethje in the 4th round, just beat Dan Hooker in a 5-round decision. He had, submitted former champ Showtime Anthony Pettis a few years ago. Had 2 fights versus Eddie Alvarez, stopped Eddie Alvarez in the second of those 2 fights. The first was ruled a no contest. So Poirier's been in there versus the who's who of the division, to where there were competing theories. And I thought that the freshness of Conor McGregor, having fought so few MMA rounds in the past 4 years since beating Eddie Alvarez in 2016, would have favored him versus Poirier, who'd been in war after war after war, to where, if anybody wasn't going to be resilient in the second, and then, in the first, second round, or be able to withstand heavy firepower over the course of time, I kind of felt that it was going to be Poirier that might wilt because of the accumulated damage he had received over the past several years, and that Conor would comparatively be the fresher fighter. But you started seeing some things working for Poirier, where he was starting to land this check hook where he would point at Conor after landing it. He had taken a couple of those hard shots from Conor, pointed at Conor like, good one, but then he would point at him when he finally caught him with a couple nice check right hooks. It was kind of one of those got you motherfucker type of points. And so he landed with those, and then he was landing with these calf kicks, which only in the past couple years has become a reliable and effective tool, and it's become pretty widely used. And Conor acknowledged in the post-fight press conference, not in the in-ring interview or in-cage interview, but in the press conference, he was saying, I had never experienced those calf kicks before. I've never felt that. I mean, he was aware of them, but he hadn't really received a flush one. And so he said, I'm going to have to figure that out going forward. I'm going to have to adjust and adapt to that reality that this is a weapon that's going to be used against me. And he also acknowledged that Dustin Poirier had experienced getting hit with those calf kicks, not leg kicks, not the back of the knee or the back of the thigh. We're talking specific calf kicks. And there was some of that going on with Poirier versus Hooker too, where there was either a lot of bone on bone, shin on shin type of kicks. But in the case of 2 southpaws, Conor said that it doesn't have the same effect if it's a righty versus a southpaw throwing those calf kicks. It doesn't land on the same sweet spot of the muscle. But the way that it worked with Poirier versus Conor was just, it was just inflicting a ton of damage with only a few of those landing. And so as I and my friend and my brother are watching this fight, one of them says, is it me or is Dustin suddenly looking as quick as Conor? Like Conor slowing down. And literally within 5 seconds of that, that's when Poirier kind of did the reversal, the change, where he went from having his back up against the cage to having Conor's back up against the cage, and then he just opened up with like 6 to 8 punches. Several of them landed, and Conor was all of a sudden, you know, backing up, looking like a wounded animal. He got hit, he got dropped, or he got half dropped to where his legs bent, but he was still up. But when his legs bent, he happened to dip right into a power punch. So he falls halfway, gets caught, and then he's on his back, and then he got finished. To where, damn, how shocking of a visual was that? Seeing Conor where his eyes kind of did that unfocused, focused look. You know what I mean? Wow. And so a lot of parties and paydays were spoiled with this one. So I'm assuming now we don't get Conor McGregor versus Manny Pacquiao, which I thought was going to go terribly for Conor anyway. It's just a bad matchup. Pacquiao does not know how to play nice. I couldn't even envision what Pacquiao dragging a fight on, along would look like without Pacquiao just doing everything that is signature to him, just opening up with flurries and 6-punch combinations, coming in with those fast, short left hands, and his legs covering the distance, jumping into the pocket. Like, I just don't see that going Conor's way at all. But now, at least as it stands, there's no chance of a Khabib versus Conor rematch. Again, at least as it stands. There is still a chance for Conor versus Poirier trilogy, but I feel like he's got to do something like win a fight against somebody other than a Cowboy Cerrone at 155, a credible opponent, to then make a Conor versus Poirier trilogy fight viable. But yeah, my assessment in this case, in terms of who gains competitively, the guy that hasn't been fighting a ton in the past 4 years, or the guy that has been fighting a ton in the past few years. And it looks like the guy who's kind of maintained the way of the warrior, if you will, and has just had that clash bone on bone. I really think that these things toughen up your muscles in a lot of ways, toughen up your bones in a lot of ways. They help with punch resistance in a lot of ways. But it looked like once things go south for Conor, which has kind of now become a pattern, when things start going bad, they unravel quickly. So I think that as it stands, Conor is still a very dangerous puncher early in the fights, and he utilized that shoulder again, by the way, the same one that he used to kind of demolish Cowboy's face before finishing him. Those landed against Poirier in the clinch, and it's funny, like, Poirier wasn't able to return. He tried returning fire with his shoulders as well, but I don't know, his shoulders aren't built like Conor's. He wasn't able to get nearly the same leverage. So it was almost like when Anderson Silva had Rich Franklin in the Muay Thai clinch in their iconic first fight, and then started landing those vicious knees to the body. Rich Franklin tried to return fire with the knees and punch in the clinch, and it just wasn't having the same impact as Silva's. It wasn't the same thing, and I felt like Poirier trying to return fire with the shoulders, it just wasn't doing what Conor's was doing. I thought that Conor might have broken his nose with one of those shoulders, and it's things like that. Like his use of the shoulders, which I thought was a very innovative thing, even though, John Jones had done that a few times. He had done it, and it was my little brother Billy that pointed this out to me. He's like, actually, John Jones has used that shoulder and weaponized that as well. He did it against Glover Teixeira. He did it against Anthony Smith. He didn't have the same impact that Conor did against Cowboy, where it just looked like he just wrecked the guy with the shoulder. But John Jones, it was weaponizing the shoulder before Conor was. But man, it looks like if you're able to get out of the first couple minutes against Conor, that the jury's out on whether he still is able to be a durable, long 2-3 round fighter, to where he can maintain his competitiveness through the course of multiple rounds. And maybe that's something where you have to get back into the rigors of the day. You have to make it a lifestyle again. You can't be a part-timer or halfway committal where you're seasonal. you know, where you are training and then you're off training, and then you're back on training and then off training. It looks like that's not going to work, at least for Conor. You know, some people seem to be able to get away with it. It seems like John Jones for a while was able to do that type of thing. But Conor, it just looks like he doesn't have the same bodily resilience, or maybe even mental resilience that he did when he was a completely committed full-timer. And we also don't want to take credit away from Poirier. This was a Poirier win as much, if not more so, than it was a Conor loss. Poirier had to weather the storm early, had to, you know, basically conquer a lot of demons. And he has conquered those over the years to where he was much more prepared to conquer those demons against Conor in the first round and then take over in the second round. Poirier is just that dude right now. Super battle tested. I mean, I don't think Conor would win in a third fight versus Dustin as it stands. He's going to have to check some boxes that he hasn't, you know, that he's not checking at this moment. And he's got to resolve, those those calf kicks. And that, you know, might require a lot of adjustments. One of Conor's signatures was his wide stance and kind of, you know, bending at the legs, creating distance control through his wide stance. And it looks like that wide stance is just like cannon fodder for Poirier's calf kicks. So that's a fundamental change if Conor has to change his stance to resolve for that. So even if he was aware of calf kicks, I don't think he was aware of how intent Poirier would be to make that a primary weapon against him. I think he might have underestimated the usage of that calf kick and the necessity to prepare for those. So, and he basically acknowledged as much in that post-fight conference. So what do? It looks like now the championship fight would have to be Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler, who had that outstanding outing against Dan Hooker, which, I mean, to Dana White, that's got to be the championship fight, because, I mean, we were looking at a possible Conor versus Khabib too. But this is about as unsexy a showdown in what has been billed as the greatest division in the history of the UFC by some people. Now the signature title fight is going to involve Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. So that means that this clash, this championship showdown, is not going to involve Khabib, he's retired. Not going to involve Conor McGregor. Not going to involve Tony Ferguson, who's, kind of fallen off a cliff, so to speak. Not going to involve Justin Gaethje. And it probably won't involve the latest guy to this elite party, Charles Oliveira, who I'm not sure what you do with him right now, because I feel like he's got as much a stake to a title fight as Michael Chandler. People have recency bias, and so, yeah, we just saw Chandler finish Dan Hooker in spectacular fashion. But let's not act like Charles Oliveira didn't just dominate Tony Ferguson and then finish Kevin Lee just before that. But, yeah, as far as what's next for Conor, who knows? It could be a fight against Tony Ferguson, kind of sort of a crossroads fight for both guys, even though I kind of feel like Tony Ferguson's crossroads fight was against Oliveira. Conor could fight Dan Hooker if Dan Hooker's still intent on fighting, even though I don't know how that would go. Oh shit, I don't know how that would go for either guy right now, because if Dan Hooker is able to get out of that first round and Conor's not able to you put him on his butt, with a heavy punch and just starch him, maybe even Hooker could break Conor down at this point. I don't know. Conor could fight Justin Gaethje, but again, Gaethje is still as Gaethje as I recall. Conor's still probably a sharper puncher in the first few minutes of the first round, but if this thing goes into the second round, third round, can Conor withstand Gaethje's attacks? I just don't know where Conor's abilities are right now. This was probably Dustin Poirier's easiest win in the past, few fights, several wins. But man, if the party's not over for Conor, the party's on pause. There's some heavy recalibration that needs to be done. And look, after Conor fought Floyd Mayweather for all that money, my dad and I were talking that same night, and he thought that Conor was done fully committing himself to the UFC, to MMA, to where my dad was thinking, how is Conor going to get back into the mindset of making this a full-time lifestyle where you just, you wake up and you grind, and you wake up and you grind, and then you wake up and you grind, and you discipline yourself. And, the thing about Floyd Mayweather is he was able to sustain this thing until he was 40 years old because he didn't drink, because there was no off season for Floyd. When he would finish a fight, he would basically be back in the gym within days, just right back on it. And usually it would be the opponents who get the big payday fighting Floyd, the Marcos Maidanas, the Robert the Ghost Guerreros, the Ricky Hattons, who once they get that Floyd money, their competitive spirit would die out and their willingness to train would die out. But the constant would be Floyd's standard of training. Conor doesn't seem to have that type of focus, and it's like, and I just don't know if you could recreate that type of vigor, that type of want, So it's like, can Conor get back into the trenches to where he's willing to take on a Charles Oliveira after an experience like this, or take on just whatever top 8 guy or top 10 guy the lightweight division has to offer. I mean, again, can a guy who just made 50 million or 75 million or whatever he made versus Floyd start training to match the likes of somebody who's fighting for 6 figures, if that? I don't know. This is a hungry man's sport, and people could, look old and get old really quickly. And by the way, wasn't that kind of weird how Conor, and I was kind of thinking this during fight week, maybe it was the haircut, maybe it was just his face looking like it was showing a few more wrinkles, but Conor looked like an older guy going into this fight, and everybody looks older when they start getting beaten up badly. So Conor, looked old, then he looked really old. It just wasn't the best look, man. And there's going to be a lot of wondering about Conor's, again, his resilience, his heart, his willingness to dig deep and to fight through like the tough times in the cage, which, again, when it starts getting bad for Conor, it gets really bad. There's just a lot of question marks, but boy, what a night. What an unexpected turn of events. And look, even those who thought that Poirier was going to win this fight, which some did, some experts did, most thought Conor was going to win, but some thought Poirier was going to win. But did anybody think that Poirier was going to, start to tactically outclass Conor, splash him with a few calf kicks, and then just put it on him with the punches to where then they're matching punch speed, and it looks like they started to match punching power because some of the starch of Conor's punches started to decrease after receiving some of those kicks and getting drained in the clinch. He just isn't the same animal several minutes into the fight. And did we think that Poirier would finish him in the second round? Like, wow. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this fight and what you think of Conor's chances are at competing in the highest levels going forward. He's 32 right now. Can he recommit himself? Can he climb the mountain again? Can he have another significant 2 to 3 wins against top tier talent to where he could either put, look, it's Conor, so one win, if it's the right win, can put him back in a title contention, if not an actual title shot. So he's not far off. If he comes back in his next fight and beats, say, Justin Gaethje or Tony Ferguson, and then he beats Dustin Poirier in a rematch, assuming Dustin Poirier isn't the champ by the time that happens, because I don't know what they're going to do with the title. I don't know if they're going to strip Khabib immediately. I don't know if they're going to give Khabib more time to think it through. I don't know if they're going to set up another fight where Dustin's got to fight Michael Chandler or Oliveira for the title. Like, I don't know what they're going to do with the belt, but I feel like Conor might be 2 wins away from a title shot. So can Conor fight 2 top guys and beat them and then win a title? There's just a lot of question marks, and I think that it will require him fully committing himself not for one fight and then take another break, but I'm talking about like dedicate yourself for for the next year, 2 years to try to scale that mountain and try to recapture that way of the warrior type of lifestyle mentality. We'll see. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this fight. Also, how interesting was it that Dana White kind of revealed that, he did speak to Khabib, and that Khabib basically said, hey, let's be honest, Dana, I'm so much better than all these guys, basically. I'm levels beyond these guys. I beat all these guys. So Dana's basically kind of tempered his earlier enthusiasm for Khabib return. He's like, yeah, it's not looking good. You know, I don't think Khabib's going to come back and beat somebody who he just beat pretty easily less than a couple years ago. Was it less than a couple years ago? It's about a couple years ago. Yeah, I don't think Khabib gets fired up about Khabib versus Dustin Poirier too. So, whew. This is probably not the outcome that Dana White would have wanted. But hats off to Dustin. I think that Dustin deserves the title, if not obviously to be in the title shot. But I mean, he look at his last look at his fights since Khabib and before Khabib, and the only guy that he's lost to since he lost to Michael Johnson several years ago was Khabib. So if it's not Khabib, Dustin Poirier's got to be the champ. He beat Gaethje. He beat Max Holloway twice. He beat Conor McGregor now. And he beat Dan Hooker. And, you know, yeah, he stopped Showtime. Dustin Poirier is the man at lightweight right now. But we'll see what they have planned, what they actually schedule, and how they distribute this title. Please leave your comments in the comments. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are into the Fight Talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.